Hi, and welcome to Dog Talk TV with your host, Tony V, where our goal here at Dog Talk TV is to keep dogs in your heart and out of the pound or shelter. And we do that by focusing on you, the dog owner. So I hope you've been watching all of our previous episodes, and I hope they've helped you. And as I stated before, I am not a dog trainer. I am a people trainer, and that's why we're having this Dog Talk TV channel. However, on today's episode, we are going to talk to some dog training experts. So today we have two brothers who have spent an entire lifetime training dogs. And we're going to tap into their wealth of knowledge in an interview. Now this interview is quite long, so we're going to break it up into multiple segments. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce two brothers, Frank and Larry Allison. And Frank is the owner of Rocks Positive Canine Training in Big Bend, Wisconsin. He is also the developer of the methodology that's used to very adequately train dogs and learn to teach people how to communicate with their dogs.
Hello, my name's Frank Allison. I'm the owner of Rocks Positive Canine Training, and this is my brother Larry Allison. We're here tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about dogs and about the ACT method, and try to bring a different perspective to everything that's going on. The origin of the ACT method was basically me observing dogs in pack situations and things like that, trying to figure out things about what was going on. And relating them to the problems that people brought before me as a trainer, dealing with primarily aggressive dogs or dogs that had what was considered aggressive problems, antisocial problems, reactivity, any of the above. And that's what caused me to originate a way that could bring all of the dogs back to a level of understanding their handlers. They had to have a way to understand how they were being communicated with and how that could be built on, similar to a foundation of communication, the ABCs, that we still use today. Okay, and so that's what the ACT method is.
Well, we started dog training back when we was kids, and for over the last 40 years we've realized that as dogs have developed and methods have changed, communication and the handlers still are the problem. It's us developing our communication system with the dog. Me and my little brother started back in the 70s. We went our different ways. We've made our full circle, and the pack behavior and the way he's presented this method is really revolutionary in several ways, because it takes the old methods and bring them more into an up-to-date that fits the average homeowner in the situation. And with that, explain your system.
Okay, well, the ACT method is basically, like I said, a way to bring the dog back into a normal understanding of how to give behavior presentations. So very quickly, we have to have some defining terms here. So communication is really a series of behavior presentation exchanges. So the dog gives a behavior presentation, you give a behavior presentation in return, he gives one in return, you give one that returns to that. How are these behavior presentations brought to the present day? Well, it's from memory. That's the way we do it. That's the way that it happens between us and the dog. And so what makes that memory? Well, the memory is made up of the genetic predisposition of the individual, whether it's a dog or a person, and the perception of the environmental stimuli they have received up until that point. Those two things combine and form a memory, and then based off how successful that memory is to them, that's why it gets pulled forward in a behavior presentation. The primary difference that I realized as to why the dog and people give different behavior presentations in ways is because we intellectually discern the decision and they intelligently decide what to do in the now. And it has quite the reactivity of differences, so to speak. A lot of differences happen there. They go off what was most successful in the past. We go off of what we think was most successful in the past and how we're going to change it to meet some kind of unforeseen need in the future. They don't do that. So that's where I began to try to figure out, okay, well, what is the most standard way to equalize this or to bring us to a flat line? And that was physical communication. Physical communication is the oldest form of communication known to man, number one, and number two, it is the only form of communication that transcends species and sex, prey and predator, male and female of the animal kingdom. Understand the intention of physical communication naturally. So I had to figure out a way in watching these animals to go, okay, how can we physically communicate with the animal to bring our to bring a better understanding from him to us, because we can only go down to his level. He can never come up to ours. So that's where I come up with the first part of the act, was just intermingling with the dogs, trying to figure out how to physically communicate with them. Then I realized that, well, if you have a way to control the behavior, then you can predictably show a spontaneous exchange. By that I mean we have to have a way to communicate with the animal in a responsible fashion. He is a predator. So for his safety, my safety, the handler's safety, and the pedestrian safety, you have to have a way to control the animal. He can't just run around. So I had to have a way to be able to control the animal with as least amount of physical force as possible, yet have the maximum amount of behavior change as a result of that change. And so that's why I use the equipment I use. And then I had to coincide that with being able to make sounds or give signals to the physical communication I'm giving the animal, so that he can understand what to do next based off that. I give it context, you know. And then I had to figure out a way to do that and give it to the average person, who is someone who hadn't lived with dogs and things like that. Because that's, go ahead.
Which brings us why we're here today in front of this camera. I started back into dogs, and I was taught by the military trainer, and we took dogs with higher drives than the normal person had, and we used techniques, and they were more forceful techniques, and they were techniques based on Pavlov's stimulus response, where you say no and you touch a match and hot, where you correct the dog very harshly and say no. He gives you the response you want, and it's more of an intimidation factor, but that was the communication. We still have that line of communication, and so my brother told me, he said, "Hey Larry, come on up here, I got something you need to see and tell me what you think." Well, I get up here, and what's different? Well, in first glance, nothing. We got a leash, we got a training collar, we got a dog, we got a handler. And he says, "Now watch this. You don't say nothing, and all of a sudden the dog is responding, so it got my attention." When you get somebody's attention and it works, bingo, we start watching a little closer. Well, what happens is this: you've got a communication not only with trust with the animal, but he is realizing that you're directing him, and it's to his advantage. And it's also to my advantage too. So if he gives me a behavior that I don't like, I make it to his disadvantage, and it's pretty easy and simple to make it to his disadvantage. And I'm watching and following this, and it seems to work. So I say, "Okay, little brother, take it in a little bit more detail."
Well, wasn't that a very impressive interview? There's lots more to come in our next episode, so stay tuned. Go back and watch the following chapters if you haven't done that, and see what's out there and get caught up to date with the methodology. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about the problems that we as humans communicate because we really fully don't understand the dog, their physiology, the way they think about things, and just how to handle them. So in the next episode, Frank and Larry have a discussion about what we can do as humans to better our relationship to our dog. So until next time, have a doggone good day, and we'll see you. This is your host, Tony V, saying see you next time.